Our parashah this week is Shemot. We're beginning the book of Exodus. Shemot means names. We're beginning, like I said, the book of Exodus, beginning chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 6, verse 1. The Haftarah portion for this week was taken out of the book of Isaiah, chapter 27, verse 6, to chapter 28, verse 13, with addition to chapter 9, verses 22 and 23, and a second Haftarah portion of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 2, verse 3. Our Brit portion this week is taken from 1 Corinthians, chapter 14, 13 through 25. Our parashah this week really should be a reminder to us that Pesach is not far away. As we begin to read the Exodus story from Egypt again, that means that time is closing fast on the old spiritual year. Because, see, Passover is considered the spiritual New Year in Judaism. We have two New Years in Judaism. We have a spiritual New Year and we have a civil New Year. The Rosh Hashanah is considered the civil New Year, in which all things pertaining between men are renewed, and Passover begins the spiritual New Year, because Passover brings us back to remembrance of God's deliverance and God's redemption, and therefore it is a new year to celebrate all that God has done for us. The time is closing fast on the old spiritual year, and therefore we should be purposing to reflect and to make reconciliation of those that we may have offended spiritually, and to remember and celebrate that we are a redeemed people, delivered from the bondage of the world to a freedom that enabled us to be able to worship and praise the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the God of our salvation. See, Shemot means names, as I mentioned earlier. And names are important. And it's because without names, there is no clear distinction between any one thing or another. Just think, if this whole room here, no one had a name. How would you know who to call on somebody? Hey, you. Well, you can say, hey, you, and everybody, if they're not paying attention, can stand up. But see, God named everything, including man. And he did that so that there would be a distinction between them. That when he called, you knew it was you, and you would answer. Just like when God called to Abraham, and he said, Abraham. Well, actually, he said Abram first. And what did Abram say? Hinehi, here I am. He heard his name. It was his name. It wasn't somebody else's name. His name was Abram. And so names are very important. But see, names can actually change, or better said, the meaning of names can change from one thing to the other. Just like we saw with we take Abraham for the example. Avram was his first name, which means a great father. But Abraham, when he added that into it, when God changed his name, he changed the meaning of his name from a great father to the father of many nations. Just like he changed Sarah's name from Sarah, which is my princess, to Sarah, to the princess, the mother of all living. And so, names can change. And the meaning of names can change. And Shemot is a great example of this. We take the name of Moses that we introduced in this parashah. Moses' name was originally given to him to designate him from where the princess had brought him forth from the water. Moses meant one brought forth from the water. But today, when we ask what is the meaning of the name of Moshe, it means deliverer. That is why when we recite such prayers as the Enkelehenu, we are acknowledging God as God, Eloheinu, our God, Adonenu, our Lord, Malchenu, our King, and lastly, Moshienu, our deliverer. And so Moses' name has now been transformed from one taken from the water to the deliverer. And so with the change in its meaning, that means there was a change in the person. Moses was no longer one who was raised up in Pharaoh's household, but now he is the one who is remembered as leading the people for God out of the land of bondage, the deliverer. his whole person had to change to fit the name, or the meaning of the name. It is this name that we can see to distinguish of God. The personal name of God is revealed in this parashah. And so, when we read Exodus 3, verses 13 through 15, but Moses said to God, suppose I go to Bnei Yisrael, and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, well, what is his name? What should I say to them? And God answered Moshe, I am who I am. Then he said, you are to say to Bnei Yisrael, Adonai, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and the name by which I should be remembered from generation to generation. Now this original Hebrew phrase is actually Eyeh Asher Eyeh. And it gives the sense of a constant, something that never changes, that can never be deviated from. It symbolizes stability, loyalty, faithfulness, and permanence. See, it's not like people think. God didn't say my name was Yud He Vav He. That comes after that, if you read the Hebrew. He says, Eyeh Asher Eyeh. Yehovah Adonai Yehovah says it. In other words, that name of Yehovah was already known to the Israelites. It wasn't not revealed to them. This name, the personal name, I am who I am, was revealed to them. Therefore they knew, because of the way the name is pronounced, that there is a constant in it. But see, this is the part that makes his name so exalted and so great, is that his name is like a man's name. Men's name changes as they grow and they live. People's names may not change in the way they're spoken or written, but their names change in the way they're perceived. A young man who starts out well, and people think of him well when they hear his name, could wind up bad. And then that name equates something evil. Or the opposite, a young man who starts out wrong in his life, and people equate the hearing of his name with something terrible. When he grows older, could have come to God and been redeemed and become a great man of goodness and mercy, and his name will stand for something else. But God's name, as he says, it never changes. I am who I am. Therefore, if I have ever said a word to you, it will always be there, because I never change. It is the difference between God and us. It is also the difference between our God and the God of the Egyptians and the God of the nations, because their gods can change. Their gods can be defeated. Their gods are created gods. And this is why when we come to the statement in Exodus 5:2 by Pharaoh to Moses, who is Adonai that I should listen to his voice and let Israel go? I do not know Adonai, and besides, I will not let Israel go. That is not something to be surprised about. Pharaoh had never been exposed to the God of the Hebrews. His generation had never known Joseph. Therefore, he had never heard of the God of the Hebrews and the greatness of this God. All he had known were the gods of the Egyptians, and especially himself, who was considered a god according to their people. But see, that ignorance would be short-lived, because God's desires for all to know who he is. This is why he did the Exodus in Egypt. This is why he will eventually do the Exodus from sin through Messiah Yeshua. It is so that all will come into the knowledge of the name of the one true God and to the salvation that he offers. Even by the time that Moses leads the people out Pharaoh believes that the God of the Israelites is greater than any of his gods. Because God has taken through each one of them plagues and has destroyed the reputation of the names of every one of Egypt's gods. Therefore they have no gods. Therefore there is nothing for them to have faith in. And therefore the only true God that could ever be would be the God of the Israelites. The one who is the creator of all life. The one who says and does and makes and come to pass. He is God alone. There is none other. Pardon me. But what we see here is also how someone registers in their heart with the name. Like I mentioned earlier, I can speak the name of a certain person and it will create different emotions within a person. I can speak the name of Yeshua, and those who have faith in Yeshua will have a feeling of safety, security, love, compassion because of his name. But I can say the name Hasatan. What image comes into your mind then? Something evil, oppressive, destructive. And so it's important that we understand the name when we hear the name. Pharaoh didn't understand who God was. Of course, God says by the time that the deliverance would be over, that they would all know who he was, and his name would be known throughout the world, and it was. But the name has to register with the heart of man. It is the part that moves the man to either seek or avoid that person. If I was to mention one of his father's name, that would be a name that you would recognize and you would go associate with as your father. But if I was to mention someone else's name that you did not know of, or not know their generosity and mercy, you might seek avoidance of them because you would be fearful of them. But God wants his name to be known so that when the heart of the person hears that name, he's drawn to that name. And this is really what the Apostle Paul is referencing when we get into our Brit portion in 1 Corinthians 14, 20 through 25. It's not that he's condemning the believers from having the use or the gift of tongues, which is a sign of the Spirit of the Lord, but it's the use of the tongues in such a fashion that there is no comprehension within the service. How will someone know how good and how great our God is if we speak in languages that none of us can understand? If I led prayers in Arabic, and none of y'all spoke Arabic, how would you know that I was exalting God? Or if I led prayers in Russian, did any of y'all speak Russian? Would you know what I was saying? Excuse me. But if I speak in the known language of those gathered, and I speak clearly the prophecy of God, then any who come into the fellowship would hear and would certainly know to be convicted in their heart of what they were not living to. Moses, remember when he tells Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go so they can worship their God, Pharaoh says, I know not this God. Therefore, I don't understand why I need to let these people go. But when he starts learning of this God, by the time he gets to that 10th plague, Pharaoh is telling Moses to get out. Don't just wait, move. Get out of here. Because he understands the greatness of God. If a person who knows not God walks into this congregation and he hears the truth of the Lord, he hears the sinfulness of mankind, and he listens with his heart, and his heart speaks to him, he will hear in his heart of his inadequacy. And he will desire to come into faith. Or if he's a believer who is unlearned, he will come to know even greater the mercy and the greatness of the grace of our God. That's why Paul exhorts the believers there to seek prophecy. Why? Because prophecy speaks of the things of God. It speaks of his character. It speaks of his love. It speaks of his grace and his mercy. And it also speaks of his judgment and his wrath. So that we're not blinded in our knowledge of God, but know the fullness of God. Therefore, when we come into that presence of that name, it will touch our hearts, it will captivate us, and it will cause us, as the scripture says, to fall down on our face and worship. That is the power of name. Names are very important. It gives us identity, it gives us presence, and it gives us knowledge, because we know someone by his name because of the reputation it carries. Our God's reputation is a reputation that he is what he will always be. He will never change, as his name says. He will be constant in all that he does. He will be there despite any circumstance, and he will always be with his people despite what they feel or how they perceive him. We are never alone with our God. This is what our Messiah tells us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. Though we cannot see him, we may not be able to hear him, we may not even be able to touch him, we know that his presence is with us. Why? Because his name guarantees it. His name is salvation. He will always be there with us to deliver us from ourselves and our circumstances. Just as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob says, I am who I am. I am there. I will be there. I will deliver you. I will redeem you. And I will take you unto myself as a people. And there I am. You will be with me always. It doesn't matter how many times we mess up, how many times we're disobedient, and God has to discipline us. As long as we are ones who have bared his name, he will always restore us at the proper time. This is the message of Exodus. Jacob and his 12 sons, well, 11 sons, because Joseph was already there, the Torah tells us. Jacob and his 11 sons go down into Egypt. And they have to go down in faith that God will bring them out. They never lived to see that happen. They never lived to see the hand of God deliver them forth. But they know with an assurance that they will. Even Joseph knows with assurance, because he commands his brothers to promise to bring his bones up out of Egypt, not to have them buried there. And that's why when God says, Eye Asher Eye, I am who I am. I am the one who spoke to Jacob. I am the one who spoke to Joseph. And I am speaking to you. My word is the same. It never changes. They will know that I have sent you because the I am has sent you. That is the power of names. So when we speak of the name of our God, when we speak of the name of our Lord, we're speaking something that has its own power. Despite what we can see in the natural, it is there. How many times do you think the Israelites cried out to God while they were in bondage, and the Egyptians looked at them like they were fools? 240 years. And yet, the day that he decides to show up, they will learn what the name of Adonai is. And they will acknowledge him as the God, the God. We go through our lives and people laugh at us because of who we believe in and the fact that we have faith in a Messiah named Yeshua, that he is the Son of the Almighty I am who I am. It doesn't matter. He knows who we are. And he says he will never leave us nor forsake us. And that he will be with us every day up until the day of his return, he will be with us. And of course, he will be with us when he returns. That is our hope. That is our strength. That is the joy of our lives. That despite the bondage, despite the circumstances of life, we have I am. He is with us. We have the name. The name has been placed upon us, and it cannot be removed by anyone of us. And so, when we're together, like Paul says, the best thing is when we speak, we should speak that 5 words can be understood better than 10,000 in another language. Why? Because then those who are unlearned, or those who are unbelieving, can hear and can know who God is and fall on their face and worship him. That is the power of the name. And it's been given to each one of us. And so God asks us to remember that. That is what separates us from everyone else, is the name that's been placed upon us. Israel as a nation and a people are just as sinful as any other people in the entire world. The thing that makes them special, the thing that separates them from all the other 70 nations of the world, is the fact that God placed his name upon them. That is their distinction. And that is where the power for them lies in. When they awaken one day and remember who their God is, they will find their deliverance as well. And they will call upon him, and he will return. And when he does, we will be with him, because he says he will gather us all together, and there we will be where he is, forever. It's the power of the name. So as we begin to get into the book of Exodus, we start beginning to see the revelation of truly who our God is. He is a God of mercy and grace, but he is also a God of judgment and wrath. But he's perfect in both. And he will show the distinction as we go through this book. And then as we give out what we learn to those who don't know, or those who are unlearned, they will see, and they will be convicted well, and hopefully come into the knowledge of the saving grace of his Messiah, Yeshua, and the one true God. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.